Hey, welcome back to yet another video. My name is Joseph and this is Panem project. In this video I just want to share a quick article that I came across recently, and it reminded me of a previous video that I filmed last year, How to Know the Bible is True. I'll link it in the description below or above so you can check it out if you haven't seen it. But at the end I also want to share a Bible verse that comes to mind regarding this topic. Okay, so the article is titled Three Scientific Discoveries That Call for a God Hypothesis by John Stonestreet and G. Shane Morris, and I found it in the Christian Post. In the book River Out of Eden, Oxford biologist and atheist superstar Richard Dawkins famously wrote, "The universe that we observe has precisely the properties we should expect if there is at bottom no design, no purpose, no evil, no good, nothing but pitiless indifference." Dawkins and other new atheists have long insisted that science has excluded the possibility of a creator, or has at least rendered it unnecessary. Turns out this belief might be scientifically out of date. According to a new book, the biggest discoveries of the last century challenge a materialistic worldview and call science back to its theistic roots. Cambridge-educated philosopher of science Stephen Meyer wrote two books, Signature in the Cell and Darwin's Doubt, that both argue against materialist accounts of biology. His latest book, The Return of the God Hypothesis, makes an even more ambitious claim. Three key 20th century discoveries, argues Meyer, challenge materialist assumptions and point not just to an intelligent designer, but to a transcendent God. Not only were most of the founders of modern science devout Christians, the scientific method itself emerged from assumptions found only in a Christian worldview, such as the intelligibility of nature and the need to constantly test our fallen intuitions against the facts. Tracing science from its theistic beginnings, Meyer shows how it gradually lost its way and became tethered to materialism. Famed scientists like Laplace, Hume, and Darwin came to believe that the God hypothesis was no longer necessary to explain the natural world, that the universe required no cause beyond itself. Given the opportunity and enough time, living things could arise and evolve on their own. Since the conditions for life were simple and the universe had existed from eternity, here we are. These assumptions went largely unchallenged until the 20th century. However, breakthroughs in astronomy, physics, and biology began to undermine materialism. For example, telescopes began to challenge the proponents, Einstein being one, of a steady-state universe. More and more evidence mounted that the universe was, in fact, not eternal, as many scientists had long assumed. If instead the universe came into being at some point in time, it must have had a cause outside of itself. To be clear, there must be a cause outside of space, time, matter, and energy. Another discovery was how finely tuned the universe is. The very laws that govern the cosmos, such as gravity, electromagnetism, nuclear forces, and the cosmological constant, are precisely calibrated in such a way that makes life possible. There's not a compelling way to explain this Goldilocks universe, one just right that could have been otherwise within a naturalistic worldview. As English astronomer and former atheist Fred Hoyle put it, a common-sense interpretation of the facts suggests that a super-intellect has monkeyed with physics. And then there's the discovery Meyer has already devoted two other books to exploring. Materialists long thought that Darwin's theory was a silver bullet against design arguments. Darwin, however, knew nothing about DNA, the inner structure of the cell, or the crucial role information plays in the existence and propagation of life. The more we learn about them, the more outdated this God is no longer necessary hypothesis seems to be. Simply put, Dawkins got it wrong. The universe we live in has properties one would expect if it were, in fact, designed by a God who had us in mind when he made the place. As Meyer's book shows, this assumption was an original conviction of many who launched and drove the scientific revolution. It's the conviction of a growing number of scientists today who are willing to challenge the powers that be and admit the design they see in the heavens, the laws of nature, and under the microscope. As Meyer puts it, the evidence is crying out for a God hypothesis. Alright, like I said in the beginning, I want to leave you with a Bible verse that came to mind when I read this article, and it brought me encouragement, and hopefully it can bring you encouragement as well. It comes from Hebrews chapter 3, verses 12 and 13, and it says, "Take care, brothers, lest there be in any of you an evil, unbelieving heart, leading you to fall away from the living God. But exhort one another every day, as long as it is called today, that none of you may be hardened by the deceitfulness of sin. These two verses show that all men are born with an evil and unbelieving heart. In the case of these Hebrews, that evil manifested itself in disbelief of the gospel, which moved them in the opposite way from God. These verses also encourage us to exhort one another every single day. Both individual accountability and corporate responsibility are intended in this verse. As long as the distressing days were upon them and they were tempted to return to the ineffective Levitical system, they were to encourage one another to identify completely with Jesus. Because repeated rejection of the gospel concerning Jesus results in a progressive hardening of the heart that will ultimately result in outright antagonism to the gospel. You see, sin lies and deceives using every trick possible. The Hebrews deceived themselves with the reasoning that their rejection of Jesus was being faithful to the older system. Their willingness to hang on to the Levitical system was really a rejection of the living word of the living God, who through Jesus had opened up a new and living way. Choosing the path of unbelief always leads only to death. So I hope that this, brings you encouragement and that you maintain your faith in Christ. And, reading these articles definitely encourages me. So I wanted to share it with you to hopefully encourage you to, be surrounded by a body of believers so that you can encourage one another and remain in the faith, and so that you may have a strong foundation in Jesus, right? And have a correct relationship with God. And so if you haven't seen my video from last year, I also want to let you know that it's there in the description for you to check it out, whenever you have a chance. All right, guys, so that concludes the video. If you liked the video, please give it a thumbs up and subscribe, and hit the bell so you can be notified when we post a new video. Love you all. Peace.